Gonna be reading Frankenstein, starting with chapter 22, starting the stream. Reading Frankenstein, starting with chapter 22, do. Is this actually gonna go live? Did we actually arrive on YouTube? There it is, HermitCraft 10 live. Okay, so we're going to pop out the chat. Going to hit edit video. Going to hit live chat. We're going to hit live reactions off, slow mode on to 3 seconds. Okay. We're going to set the game to Minecraft. Why did that not work? Okay, so we don't have any pre-stream music because we don't want this VOD to be deleted. Okay. So, howdy Centauratron, howdy to Onion. Welcome Quilly Draws, Iconic Anemone, Red Bin Kitten. Getting ready to go. Okay, so we're going to be pushing the limits of what we can and can't do during a, what do you call it, stream? During a reading stream here. Can we read out loud while marking pillars? I don't know. Maybe. If you've never seen a Joe Hill stream before, buckle up. This is going to be a weird one. We are going to be doing some chill tasks around our library here while we read chapter 22 of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And that might seem like a bad idea. Let's find out. Oh yeah, I haven't posted the tipping link yet. What else do we have to do to take down the setting up now sign? We need to post the tipping link. We've already greeted everybody. Do I play a tangled parody of When Will My Life Begin every time you stream? No, not every time. Pepper Basenji says, hello, Joe and chat. How many chapters left for the book? I don't know. We're on chapter 22. And I try to live in the moment, Pepper Basenji. I'm not Prepper Basenji. I'm not preparing for the end of the book. I'm experiencing chapter 22 right now of Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, by Mary Shelley. The voyage came to an end. We landed and proceeded to Paris. I soon found that I had overtaxed my strength and that I must repose before I could continue my journey. My father's care and attentions were indefatigable, but he did not know the origin of my sufferings and sought erroneous methods to remedy the incurable ill. He wished me to seek amusement in society. I abhorred the face of man. Oh, not abhorred. They were my brethren, my fellow beings. And I felt attracted even to the most repulsive among them, as to creatures of an angelic nature and celestial mechanism. But I felt that I had no right to share their intercourse. I had unchained an enemy among them, whose joy it was to shed their blood and revel in their groans. How they would, each and all, abhor me and hunt me from the world. Did they know how my unhallowed acts? Did they know my unhallowed acts and the crimes which had their source in me? My father yielded at length to my desire to avoid society, and strove by various arguments to banish my despair. Sometimes he thought that I felt deeply the degradation of being obliged to answer a charge of murder, and he endeavored to prove to me the futility of pride. Alas, my father, said I, how little do you know me? Human beings, their feelings and passions, would indeed be degraded if such a wretch as I felt pride. Justine, poor unhappy Justine, was as innocent as I, and she suffered the same charge. She died for it, and I am the cause of this. I murdered her. William, Justine, and Henry, they all died by my hands. My father had often, during my imprisonment, heard me make the same assertion. When I thus accused myself, he sometimes seemed to desire an explanation. And at others, he appeared to consider it as the offspring of delirium, and that during my illness, some idea of this kind had presented itself to my imagination. The remembrance of which I preserved in my convalescence. I avoided explanation and maintained a continual silence during which, concerning the wretch I had created. I had a persuasion that I should be supposed mad, and this in itself would have chained, and this in itself would forever have chained my tongue. But, besides, I could not bring myself to disclose a secret which would fill my hearer with consternation, and make fear and unnatural horror the inmates of his breast. I checked, therefore, my impatient thirst for sympathy, and was silent when I would have given the world to have confided the fatal secret. Yet still, words like those I have recorded would burst uncontrollable from me. I could make no explanation of them, but their truth, in part, relieved the burden of my mysterious woe. Upon this occasion, my father said, with an expression of unbounded wonder, "My dearest Victor, what infatuation is this? My Dear son, I entreat you to never make such an assertion again. I am not mad, I cried energetically. The sun and the heavens who have viewed my operations can bear witness of my truth. I am the assassin of those most innocent. They died by my machinations. 1,000 times would I have shed my own blood, drop by drop, to have saved their lives. But I could not, my father. Indeed, I could not sacrifice the whole human race. The conclusion of this speech convinced my father that my ideas were deranged. He instantly changed the subject of our conversation and endeavored to alter the course of my thoughts. He wished as much as possible to obliterate the memory of the scenes that had taken place in Ireland, and never alluded to them or suffered me to speak of my misfortunes. As time passed away, I became more calm. Misery had her dwelling in my heart, but I no longer talked in the same incoherent manner of my own crimes. Sufficient to me was the consciousness of them. By the utmost self-violence, I curbed the imperious voice of wretchedness, which sometimes desired to declare itself to the whole world. And my manners were calmer and more composed than they had ever been since my journey to the Sea of Ice. A few days before we left Paris on our way to Switzerland, I received the following letter from Elizabeth. My dear friend, it gave me the greatest pleasure to receive a letter from my uncle dated at Paris. You are no longer at a formidable distance, and I may hope to see you in less than a fortnight. My poor cousin, how much you must have suffered. I expect to see you looking even more ill than when you quitted Geneva. This winter has passed most miserably. Tortured as I have been by anxious suspense, yet I hope to see peace in your countenance, and to find your heart is not totally void of comfort and tranquility. Yet I fear that the same feelings now exist that made you so miserable a year ago, even perhaps augmented by time. I would not disturb you at this period, when so many misfortunes weigh upon you, but a conversation I had with my uncle previous to his departures renders some explanation necessary before we meet. Explanation? You may possibly say, what can Elizabeth have to explain? If you really say this, my questions are answered, and all my doubts satisfied. But you are distant from me, and in a probability of this being the case... Oh, wait. There's not a quotation mark at the beginning of this. So I thought that was switching back to the author I thought that was back to Vicky F. talking to Captain Walden. Sorry, this is actually still exposition from Elizabeth's letter. Sorry. I'm realizing I thought that I could type notes on these signs with call numbers while I was reading, and that was hubris. I try to give myself relatively repetitive tasks to do during these readings, and apparently writing on signs in a video game, even if it's really simple stuff, while reading out loud is just slightly beyond my art. Okay. So, let's go ahead, and we're just going to slap a few more signs up here. We can set these formally later. I was thinking that what we'll probably have is, rather than having signs on these bookshelves here, we'll have the signs at eye level on either side for these little workstations. And we'll have, like... oh, actually, wait, is there 3 workstations there? Yeah, okay. That's still okay. We'll make that work. That's not the end of the world. In fact, it's not even the end of the summer. I don't know how I miscounted those. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe that's just where they meet. And we may end up having a whole info desk here instead of the thing. So, okay. Sorry about that. My point is that, yeah, we are going to occasionally... If I'm messing up too much of the reading, I'm occasionally going to take a break and mentally reset. And I feel like I was messing up too much of the reading there. Even though some of that is the error of the typesetter for not having an open quote on that next paragraph. Space Demon says, Joe, just got home from my first ever live concert. How are you tonight? I am doing well. I slept so hard last night. I slept for like 10 hours straight. I set an alarm. And I was like, I probably won't need this, but just in case, I'll set an alarm for, like, shortly before lunch. But chances are I'll wake up in 6 hours and be like, I gotta go edit. But no, I slept, like, straight through the night last night. So I'm feeling pretty alert, but... And honestly, I probably wouldn't have done that good reading while putting on the signs if I wasn't feeling pretty alert. But yeah, I'm... continuously trying to push the limits of what tasks I can do while reading in Minecraft, and writing call numbers on signs is definitely one that is beyond my art. So we are going to leave that there as a concept and try to find something else productive for me to do right now. Oh, thank you, Jev, for going to bed. I was kind of on the fence about resetting the lighting over here, because I had been looking at some alternate ways to make the lighting look good. But that feels like rework, and I'm trying to avoid rework. Crystalli3 says, I'm so jealous. I slept terribly last night, but got stuck in a nap around nap time. Lunchtime. Oh, gotcha. Dolly Fine says, Joe, I never get to catch these streams while I'm in the car on the way home from the airport. Well, I hope you have a fun stream hanging out with us tonight. Okay. So looking at all this and trying to think about what is a good use of our reading time here. Hi, Emeraldy. One thing that we can do is we can improve these end caps. Both of these end caps are miserable and probably need to be cleaned up. So that's pretty straightforward. I could probably do that while reading. We're gonna do an inventory management swap, and then we're gonna resume the reading. Okay. So let's go take all the stuff we have back to the library area, because we need these materials later for doing more stuff with the books, but we don't need them right now. Okay. Okay. So I do have some question, too, of if we just open the doors to the library and let these guys leave, will they come back and use their beds, or will they get so lost we never see them ever again? I'm suspecting they'll get so lost we'll never see them ever again. Also, I really feel like we should be consolidating down some of these papers and stuff. Okay. Nothing over here is consolidated well. Oh, we do actually need an anvil, I think, back here somewhere. That actually looks like kind of a little... I actually like that. We're going to leave that. Okay. Okay, so we're going to toss these into here. Okay, so that is one shulker reclaimed. And... cool. On some level, part of me is also like we could put in a bunch of couches and stuff right now, but that's not a good use of our time. No, okay, here's what we're doing. We're putting everything that we don't imminently need for our current task in here. That is all going right in there. Then we are going to grab the tools and gearbox, and we are going to put the sword and... yeah, we're going to put the sword back in here. Okay. Then from the fireworks box, we're going to grab a fresh stack of 9 fireworks, which we need to use as few of as possible. From the nom nom box, we're going to grab full stack of chicken, and then touch that as little as possible. Now we are going to pull the things we actually need to do the next task we have. We are going to get a green screen so you can see my face down here in slot 9 where I'm putting the hot in the hot bar. Cool, cool, cool. Just as a reminder, we are 20 away from our next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay. Stu, my guy, says, hi, glad to catch stream again finally. Yeah, welcome. We're going to be reading some more Frankenstein in just a few minutes. We're doing some inventory management first because inventory management is my passion. And I want to get... we got a lot of stuff to get done. And we need to be making progress on it all. So, okay. I thought I could do some more library work during this stream, but that was hubris. So instead, we're going to go out and we're going to do some other work. Okay. This way. Walk this way. Grab blocks this way. Glass and Pain says, Joe, don't do hubris. I do hubris constantly. I do hubris more than anyone should. Okay, so... I'm going to grab some sandstone here. We're going to need some sandstone. We're going to need some polished andesite. And we're going to need a bunch of normal stone. So let's grab a normal stone box, as well as many normal stones. Okay, and then additionally, further, we need to grab many copper trapdoors. You might say, Joe, is that enough copper trapdoors? No. No, that is not. That is not enough for copper trapdoors. So we're going to grab Block of copper here. Let's grab 2 blocks of copper. We're going to temporarily put that stone back because I shouldn't have grabbed that yet. Until after getting the copper trap doors made. Okay. That's probably fine now. Just perfectly normal quantities of copper trapdoors. Okay. We need to go re-grab the stone blocks that we had from earlier. Let's go back to reading Elizabeth here. So we've got a letter from Elizabeth to Vicky F that we're not going to read. Can these guys fit down here? Probably not. I wasn't imagining so. Explanation. You may possibly say, what can Elizabeth have to explain? If you really say this, my questions are answered and all my doubts satisfied. But you are distant from me, and it is possible that you may dread and yet be pleased with this explanation. And in a probability of this being the case, I dare not any longer postpone writing what in your absence I have often wished to express to you, but have never had the courage to begin. You well know, Victor, that our union has been the favorite plan of your parents even since our infancy. We were told this when we were young and taught to look forward to it as an event that would certainly take place. We were affectionate playfellows during childhood, and, I believe, dear and valued friends to one another as we grew older. But as brother and sister often entertain a lively affection toward each other, without desiring a more intimate union, may not such also be our case? Tell me, dearest Victor, answer me, I conjure you, by our mutual happiness, with a simple truth. Do you not love another? You have traveled. You have spent several years of your life at Ingolstadt, and I confess to you, my friend, that when I saw you last autumn so unhappy, flying to solitude from the society of every creature, I could not help suggesting that you might regret our connection, and believe yourself bound in honor to fulfill the wishes of your parents, although they opposed themselves to your inclinations. But this is false reasoning. I confess to you, my friend, that I love you, and in my airy dreams of futurity, you have been my constant friend and companion. But it is your happiness I desire, as well as my own, when I declare to you that our marriage would render me eternally miserable, unless it were the dictate of your own free choice. Even now I weep to think that, borne down as you are by the cruelest misfortunes, you may stifle by the word honor all hope of that love and happiness which would alone restore you to yourself. I, who have been so disinterested and who have so disinterested an affection for you, may increase your miseries tenfold by being an obstacle to your wishes. Victor, be assured that your cousin and playmate has too sincere a love for you not to be made miserable by this supposition. Be happy, my friend. And if you obey me in this one request, remain satisfied that nothing on earth will have the power to interrupt my tranquility. Do not let this letter disturb you. Do not answer tomorrow, or the next day, or even until you come, if it will give you pain. My uncle will send me news of your health. And if I see but one smile on your lips when we meet, occasioned by this or any other exertion of mine, I shall need no other happiness. Elizabeth Lavenza, Geneva, May 18th, 17. This letter revived in my memory what I had before forgotten, the threat of the fiend.
I will be with you on your wedding night.
Such was my sentence, and on that night would the demon employ every art to destroy me and tear me from that glimpse of happiness which promised partly to console my sufferings. On that night, he had determined to consummate his crimes by my death. Well, be it so, a deadly struggle would then assuredly take place, in which, if he were victorious, I should be at peace, and his power over me be at an end. If he were vanquished, I should be a free man. Alas, what freedom! Such as the peasant enjoys when his family have been massacred before his eyes, his cottage burnt, his lands laid waste, and he is turned adrift, homeless, penniless, and alone, but free. Such would be my liberty, except that in my Elizabeth I possessed a treasure. Alas, balanced by those horrors of remorse and guilt which would pursue me until death. Sweet and beloved Elizabeth, I read and reread her letter, and some softened feeling stole into my heart and dared to whisper paradisical dreams of love and joy. But the apple was already eaten, and the angel's arm bared to drive me from all hope. Yet I would die to make her happy. If the monster executed his threat, death was inevitable. Yet again, I considered whether my marriage would hasten my fate. My destruction might indeed arrive a few months sooner, but if my torturer should suspect that I postponed it, influenced by his menaces, he would surely find other, and perhaps more dreadful, means of revenge. He had vowed to be with me on my wedding night. Yet he did not consider that threat as binding him to peace in the meantime. for as if to show me that he was not yet satiated with blood, he had murdered Clerval immediately after the enunciation of his threats. I resolved, therefore, that if my immediate union with my cousin would conduce either to hers or my father's happiness, my adversary's designs against my life should not slow it a single hour. In this state of mind, I wrote to Elizabeth. My letter was calm and affectionate. I fear, my beloved girl, little happiness remains for us on earth. Yet all that I may one day enjoy is centered in you. Chase away your idle fears. To you alone do I consecrate my life and my endeavors for contentment. I have one secret, Elizabeth, a dreadful one. When revealed to you, it will chill your frame with horror, and then, far from being surprised at my misery, you will only wonder that I survive what I have endured. I will confide this tale of misery and terror to you the day after our marriage shall take place. For, my sweet cousin, there must be perfect confidence between us. But, until then, I conjure you, do not mention or allude to it. This I most earnestly entreat, and I know that you will comply. In about a week after the arrival of Elizabeth's letter, we returned to Geneva. The sweet girl welcomed me with warm affection, yet tears were in her eyes as she beheld my emaciated frame and feverish cheeks. I saw a change in her also. She was thinner, and had lost much of that heavenly vivacity that had before charmed me. But her gentleness and soft looks of compassion made her a more fit companion for one blasted and miserable as I was. The tranquility which I now enjoyed did not endure. Memory brought madness with it, and when I thought of what had passed, a real insanity possessed me. Sometimes I was furious and burnt with rage. Sometimes, low and despondent, I neither spoke nor looked at anyone, but sat, motionless, bewildered by the multitude of miseries that overcame me. Elizabeth alone had the power to draw me from these fits. Her gentle voice would soothe me when transported by passion and inspire me with human feelings when sunk in torpor. She wept with me and for me. When reason returned, she would remonstrate and endeavor to inspire me with resignation. It is well for the unfortunate to be resigned, but for the guilty there is no peace. The agonies of remorse poison the luxury there is otherwise sometimes found in indulging the excess of grief. Soon after my arrival, my father spoke of my immediate marriage with Elizabeth. I remained silent. Have you then some other attachment? None on earth. I love Elizabeth and look forward to our union with delight. Let the day, therefore, be fixed, and on it I will consecrate myself in life or death to the happiness of my cousin. My dear Victor, do not speak thus. Heavy misfortunes have befallen us, but let us only cling closer to what remains and transfer our love for those whom we have lost to those who yet live. Our circle will be small, but bound close by the ties of affection and mutual misfortune. And when time shall have softened your despair, new and dear objects of care will be born to replace those of whom we have been so cruelly deprived. Such were the lessons of my father. But to me, the remembrance of the threat returned, nor can you wonder that, omnipotent as the Feed had yet been in his deeds of blood, I should almost regard him as invincible. And that when he had pronounced the words,
I shall be with you on your wedding night,
I should regard the threatened fate as unavoidable. But death was no evil to me. If the loss of Elizabeth were balanced with it, and I therefore, with a contented and even cheerful countenance, agreed with my father that if my cousin would consent, the ceremony should take place in 10 days, and thus put, as I imagined, a seal to my fate. Great God. It was for but one instant I had thought what might be the hellish intention of my fiendish adversary. Oh, sorry. If for one instant I had thought what might be the hellish intention of my fiendish adversary, I would rather have banished myself forever from my native country and wandered a friendless outcast over the earth than have consented to this miserable marriage. But, as if possessed with magic powers, the monster had blinded me to his real intentions. And when I thought that I prepared only my own death, I hastened that of a far dearer victim. As the period fixed for our marriage drew nearer, whether from cowardice or a prophetic feeling, I felt my heart sink within me. When I concealed my feelings by an appearance of hilarity that brought smiles and joy to the countenance of my father, but hardly deceived the ever-watchful and nicer eye of Elizabeth. She looked forward to our union with placid contentment, not unmingled with a little fear. Which past misfortunes had impressed, and that what now appeared certain and tangible happiness might soon dissipate into an airy dream and leave no trace but deep and everlasting regret. Preparations were made for the event. Congratulatory visits were received, and all wore a smiling appearance. I shut up as well as I could in my own heart the anxiety that preyed there, and entered with seeming earnestness into the plans of my father, although they might serve only as decorations. Of my tragedy. Through my father's exertions, a part of the inheritance Elizabeth had been restored to her by the Through my father's exertions, a part of the inheritance of Elizabeth had been restored to her by the Austrian government. A small possession on the shores of Como belonged to her. It was agreed that, immediately after our union, we should proceed to Villa Lavenza and spend our first days of happiness beside the beautiful lake near which it stood. In the meantime, I took every precaution to defend my person in case the fiend should ever openly attack me. I carried pistols and a dagger constantly about me, and was ever on the watch to prevent artifice. And by these means gained a greater degree of tranquility. Indeed, as the period approached, the threat appeared more as a delusion. Not to be regarded as worthy to disturb my peace, while the happiness I hoped for in my marriage wore a greater appearance of certainty as the day fixed for its solemnization drew near, and I heard it continually spoken of as an occurrence which no accident could possibly prevent. Elizabeth seemed happy. My tranquil demeanor contributed greatly to calm her mind. But on the day that was to fulfill my wishes and my destiny, she was melancholy, and a presentiment of evil pervaded her, and perhaps also she thought of the dreadful secret which I had promised to reveal to her on the following day. My father was, in the meantime, overjoyed. And, in the bustle of preparation, only recognized in his niece the diffidence of a bride. After the ceremony was performed, a large party assembled at my father's, but it was agreed that Elizabeth and I should commence our journey by water, sleeping that night at Evian and continuing our voyage the following day. The day was fair, the wind favorable. All smiled on our nuptial embarkation. Those were the last moments of my life, during which I enjoyed the feeling of happiness. We passed rapidly along. The sun was hot, but we were sheltered from its rays by a kind of canopy while we enjoyed the beauty of the scene. Sometimes on one side of the lake, where we saw Mount Saleve, the pleasant banks of Montalegre, and at a distance surmounting all, the beautiful Mont Blanc, and the assemblage of snowy mountains that in vain endeavor to emulate her. Sometimes, coasting the opposite banks, we saw the mighty Jura opposing its dark side to the ambition that would quit its native country, and an almost insurmountable barrier to the invader who should wish to enslave it. I took the hand of Elizabeth. "You are sorrowful, my love. Ah, if you knew what I had suffered, and what I may yet endure, you would endeavor to let me taste the quiet and freedom from despair that this one day at least permits me to enjoy." "Be happy, my dear Victor," replied Elizabeth. "There is, I hope, nothing to distress you, and be assured that if a lively joy is not painted in my face, my heart is contented. Something whispers to me not to depend too much on the prospect that is open before us, but I will not listen to such a sinister voice. Observe how fast we move along, and how the clouds, which sometimes obscure and sometimes rise above the dome of Mont Blanc, render this scene of beauty still more interesting. Look also at the innumerable fish that are swimming in the clear waters, where we can distinguish every pebble that lies at the bottom. What a divine day! How happy and serene all nature appears. I feel like I was using the New Jersey voice for Elizabeth. This is what I get for missing a week. I'm like second guessing my voices. I feel like I was using my New Jersey aunt accent for Elizabeth up until now for some reason, and I'm not sure that I like the alternative that I'm doing. I was just like, okay, well, since I was doing the father in a deep voice, I should do Elizabeth in a higher pitched variant, like, but that doesn't necessarily follow. Okay. Well, anyway, welcome to Ping the Net, Razor Random, Lizzie Mac, and Iron Fox. We are currently reading Frankenstein. Howdy, Mr. Hardluck. Just taking a second, because I feel like I think I overextended myself a little bit with the complexity of the tasks that I'm taking on this evening while trying to read. Normally, I would have some really super straightforward, grindy tasks, and instead I'm doing ones that require a little bit more attention to detail. And I feel like it's not going as smoothly as I would like. Okay. Let me try this again. Let me try doing the Elizabeth bit there again. Be happy, my dear Victor. There is, I hope, nothing to distress you. And be assured that if a lively joy is not painted in my face, my heart is contented. Something whispers to me not to depend too much on the prospect that is open before us, but I will not listen to such a sinister voice. Observe how fast we move along, and how the clouds, which sometimes obscure, and sometimes rise above the dome of Mont Blanc, render the scene of beauty still more interesting. Look also at the innumerable fish that are swimming in the clear waters, where we can distinguish every pebble that lies at the bottom. Ugh, what a divine day! How happy and serene all nature appears. Thus, Elizabeth endeavored to divert her thoughts and mine from all reflection upon melancholy subjects. But her temper was fluctuating. Joy for a few instants shone in her eyes, but it continually gave place to distraction and reverie. The sun sank lower in the heavens. We passed over the river Drance and observed its path through the chasms of the higher and the glens of the lower hills. The Alps here come closer to the lake, and we approached the amphitheater of mountains which forms its eastern boundary. The spire of Evian alone. The spire of Evian shone under the woods that surrounded it, and the range of mountain above mountain by which it was overhung. The wind, which had hitherto carried us along with amazing rapidity, sank at sunset to a light breeze. The soft air just ruffled the water, and caused a pleasant motion among the trees as we approached the shore, from which it wafted the most delightful scent of flowers and hay. The sun sank beneath the horizon as we landed, and I touched the shore, and I felt those cares and fears revive, which soon were to clasp me and cling to me forever. Okay, so that was 1 hour for chapter 22. Let's see how many pages that was. Okay, so that was... Chapter 22 was 1 page up. Hold on. 2 page up, 3 page up, 4 page up, 5 page up, 6 page up, 7 page up, 8 page up, 9 page up, 10 page up, 12. Okay, so let's see how many page ups chapter 23 is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's short enough. We can get to chapter 23 and keep going. We can get that into an hour. Okay. That is... If your username is promoting a fast food chain, you're going to get banned. Sorry. Okay. They're not a sponsor. They're not paying me enough to keep you around. Good night, Glass and Pain. Sleep well. Anybody have any thoughts on chapter 22 thus far? Before we start chapter 23? Just as a reminder, this is a viewer-supported stream, and tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. We are currently $20 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Okay, so... I should probably come down here with the bucket. But... part of me is just like, well, if somebody needs the snow, it'd be good to have it. Also, I don't want to wipe out all the torches quite yet. I feel like also it might be advantageous to have some of the other kind of posts in along here. Oh, well, that's an awkward one. How that cuts in like that. Actually, I'm not sure exactly how that happened. let's come back over here and look at this side. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Am I reading this right? Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, probably not exactly right, but close enough. Okay. Okay. Crystallis3 says, I've always thought you should tell your potential spouse potentially life-altering secrets before the wedding. You know, so they can make informed decisions. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. I feel like a lot of the problems in this book could have been solved by Victor Frankenstein literally talking to any other person about any of his decisions or choices. Like, he's constantly doing stuff that, like, a second person would go, actually, why don't we rein that in a little bit and revisit it? Okay, you got a good start here, but let's polish this a little. And he does not. He does not get feedback or consult other people. And so everything he does ends up being just like one guy's terrible idea all the time. Which doesn't seem, you know, great. Okay, actually, I'm going to pull this one. Yeah. What do the lines of torches represent? A bunch of the angles for the building. Because this whole building is built on diagonals. They're like guides for some of the stuff that's over top. Diet Ginger Dale says, that reminds me, I got to finish my audiobook tomorrow and pick a new one before work on Monday. Well, if you're looking for summer reading recommendations, I wrote a blog post after finishing Dungeon Crawler Carl books 1 through 7. I enjoyed the audiobooks of those. And I'm probably... I would love to have physical copies at some point. They just released a hardcover run, but there's no way I could afford that. But yeah, no, I really like those books a lot. I really had to pull a lot of punches in my review in terms of like talking about how much I like different parts of the books. Maybe that's not pulling punches, but like, I had to, like, there was a lot of stuff that's like spoilers for the later books where I'm like, there's so many good decisions in these books. I've been on a sci-fi kick lately, says Ginger Dale. Yeah, this is sci-fi. It's kind of like sci-fi with fantasy elements. But it's... I don't want to go into it too much right now because we got to get into the... We got to keep reading Frankenstein. But yeah, basically the premise is aliens show up on Earth and say, hey, we reached out to your government 4,500 years ago and about, you know, claiming all your minerals, and nobody ever got back to us or filed any paperwork, so we're here to claim all your minerals. If you want to have a, per the Indigenous Species Act, you can appeal this by attempting to win back all of Earth's resources on a intergalactic game show, basically. And basically the idea is that they create a giant dungeon underneath the Earth's surface and say, hey, if anybody can make it through all 18 levels of the dungeon, you can have your stuff back. But here's the thing, is no one's ever made it past like the 13th level of the dungeon on any world they've ever done this. It's just something that they do so they can sell ads. All of the humans are essentially pretty screwed. So you might think like, wow, you'd have to have a pretty screwed up situation in the broader galaxy for stuff like this to be permissible and like, you know, because it's one thing to say like, okay, so aliens are going around harvesting planets, but it's another thing for it to be like, not only are they harvesting planets, but they're the most popular television show in the galaxy is about how they mess with the people whose planets they just stole, right? You'd be like, that seems like a pretty messed up galaxy. And as the books go on, we learn more and more about like I was going to say geopolitical, but the astropolitical situation. And boy, it's a mess out there. It's one of those things where I think the author does a great job of using like Kurt Vonnegut and Douglas Adams-esque scenarios to explore how bad things can be when selfish people are allowed to run things. It's really good. It's really funny, and it's also really well thought through. So yeah. And the Jeff Hayes, who does the audiobook narration, is absolutely stupendous. I'm sitting here. I was kind of depressed when I was screwing up the chapter 22 of Frankenstein because I'm like, I'm not giving this the focus it needs. Like I've actually just done 2 listens. I've listened through all of Dungeon Crawler Crawl twice now in a row, all 7 books. Like, the narration is so good. And I'm like, I am not bringing the heat that Jeff Hayes brings to it right now. I am letting myself get too distracted by these tasks in game. I need to find simpler tasks in game for next week. Asymptotal 360 says, that sounds like a fun premise. Is it more serious or a funny tone? It's a lot. If you've read any Kurt Vonnegut, like Slaughterhouse-5 or Player Piano, Sirens of Titan, it's got a funny tone about serious themes. The themes are deadly serious and are very human and upsetting, but they are explored through the absurd. Because it's kind of like how BoJack Horseman is about depression and chemical dependency, but because there's a bunch of silly animals that have, like, puns in their names, like, people can get through it easier, you know? Like, it's hard to make something that explores subjects this serious, like, actually palatable, unless you, like, make it absurd or comedic. And so it's, I would say, one of the best examples of doing both. But yeah, it's really solid. Very well written, like, well-grounded characters that are very plausible. Like, the characters themselves are all, like, this feels like this could be a real person for the most part. But the scenarios that the humans are chucked into for the entertainment of the aliens are all bonkers. So, yeah. Okay. So anyway, we should probably get into chapter 23. I was trying to give people a moment to tip, but it doesn't look like that's happening. So let's go ahead and update the what we're reading thing here and see if I can actually try and focus a little better this time. I was losing my place way too often, trying to... I was trying to do too many tasks that involve counting and stuff that it's. Yeah. I don't know why I push myself so hard. Like, I should really just accept that, like, it's normal that if you're trying to do a good job at reading a story out loud, you don't do complicated geometry at the same time. Or you don't type things on signs at the same time. That's very silly to expect myself to be able to be good at that. So, okay. So let's repin the what we're reading link with the chapter 23 link. Unpin at end of stream. I hate that Twitch makes it like a 5-click thing now to unpin something at the end of the stream instead of just having it go. But whatever, it's fine. Yeah, we're gonna toss the snow in here. Let it snow. Let it snow. Let it snow. La da 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 da. Let it snow. Let it snow. Ba ba da. That should probably not be an open hole there. We'll fix that later. Okay. Hey, we got our first tip of the stream rolling in. Let's see who that is from. It's from Daniel, who says, here's a tip. Check out Joe's review of Dungeon Crawler Carl. Well, thank you very much. I am actually pretty happy with how that review came out. That gets us now 14 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay. It was 8 o'clock when we landed. We walked for a short time on the shore, enjoying the transitory light, and then retired to the inn and contemplated the lovely scene of the waters, woods, and mountains, obscured in darkness, yet still displaying their black outlines. The wind, which had fallen in the south, now rose with great violence in the west. The moon had reached her summit in the heavens and was beginning to descend. The clouds swept across it swifter than the flight of the vulture and dimmed her rays, while the lake reflected the scene of the busy heavens, rendered still busier by the restless waves that were beginning to rise. Suddenly, a very heavy storm of rain descended. I had been calm during the day, but so soon as the night obscured the shapes of objects, 1,000 fears arose in my mind. I was anxious and watchful, while my right hand grasped a pistol which was hidden in my bosom. Every sound terrified me. But I resolved that I would sell my life dearly and not shrink from the conflict until my own life, or that of my adversary, was extinguished. Elizabeth observed my agitation for some time in timid and fearful silence. But there was something in my glance which communicated terror to her, and, trembling, she asked, "What is it that agitates you, my dear Victor? What is it that you fear?" "Oh, peace, peace, my love. This night, and all will be safe, but this night is dreadful, very dreadful." I passed an hour in this state of mind, when suddenly I reflected how fearful the combat which I momentarily expected would be to my wife, and I earnestly entreated her to retire, resolving not to join her until I had obtained some knowledge as to the situation of my enemy. She left me, and I continued some time walking up and down the passages of the house and inspecting every corner which might offer a retreat to my adversary. But I discovered no trace of him, and was beginning to conjecture that some fortunate chance had intervened to prevent the execution of his menaces, when I suddenly heard a shrill and deadly scream. It came from the room to which Elizabeth had retired. As I heard it, the whole truth rushed into my mind. My arms dropped. The motion of every muscle and fiber was suspended. I could feel the blood trickling in my veins and tingling in the extremities of my limbs. This state lasted for but an instant. The scream was repeated, and I rushed into the room. Great God, why did I not then expire? Why am I here to relate the destruction of the best hope and purest creature on earth? She was there, lifeless and inanimate, thrown across the bed, her head hanging down, and her pale and distorted features half covered by her hair. Everywhere I turn, I see the same figure, her bloodless arms and relaxed form flung by the murderer on its bridal bier. Could I behold this and live? Alas, life is obstinate, and clings closest where it is most hated. For a moment only did I lose recollection. I fell senseless on the ground. When I recovered, I found myself surrounded by the people of the inn. Their countenances expressed a breathless terror, but the horror of the others appeared only as a mockery, a shadow of the feelings which oppressed me. I escaped from them to the room where lay body of Elizabeth, my love, so lately living, so dear, so worthy. She had been moved from the posture in which I had beheld her. And now, as she lay, her head upon her arm, and a handkerchief thrown across her face and neck, I might have supposed her to be asleep. I rushed toward her and embraced her with ardor, but the deadly languor and coldness of the limbs told me that what I now held in my arms had ceased to be the Elizabeth whom I had loved and cherished. The murderous mark of the fiend's grasp was on her neck, and the breath had ceased to issue from her lips. While I still hung over her in the agony of despair, I happened to look up. The windows of the room had been darkened, and I felt a kind of panic. On seeing the pale yellow light of the moon illuminate the chamber. The shutters had been thrown back, and, with a sensation of horror not to be described, I saw at the open window a figure the most hideous and abhorred. A grin was on the face of the monster. He seemed to jeer, as with his fiendish finger He pointed toward the corpse of my wife. I rushed toward the window and, drawing a pistol from my bosom, fired. But he eluded me, leaped from his station, and running with the swiftness of lightning, plunged into the lake. The report of the pistol brought a crowd into the room. I pointed to the spot where he had disappeared, and we followed the track with boats. Nets were cast, but in vain. After passing several hours, we returned hopeless, most of my companions believing it to have been a form conjured up by my fancy. After having landed, they proceeded to search the country, parties going in different directions, among the woods and vines. I attempted to accompany them, and proceeded a short distance from the house. But my head whirled round. My steps were like those of a drunken man. I fell at last in a state of utter exhaustion. A film covered my eyes, and my skin was parched with the heat of fever. In this state, I was carried back and placed on a bed, hardly conscious of what had happened. My eyes wandered around the room as if to seek something I had lost. After an interval, I arose, and, as if by instinct, crawled into the room where the corpse of my beloved lay. There were women weeping around. I hung over it and joined my sad tears to theirs. All this time, no distinct idea presented itself to my mind, but my thoughts rambled to various subjects, reflecting confusedly on my misfortunes and their cause. I was bewildered in a cloud of wonder and horror. The death of William, the execution of Justine, the murder of Clerval, and, lastly, of my wife. Even at that moment, I knew not that my only remaining friends were safe from the malignity of my fiend. My father, even now, might be writhing under his grasp, and Ernest might be dead at his feet. The idea made me shudder and recalled me into action. I started up and resolved to return to Geneva with all possible speed. There were no horses to be procured, and I must return by the lake. But the wind was unfavorable, and the rain fell in torrents. However, it was hardly morning, and I might reasonably hope to arrive by night. I hired men to row, and I took an oar myself, for I had always experienced relief from mental torment by bodily exercise. But the overflowing misery I now felt, and the excess of agitation that I endured, rendered me incapable of any exertion. I threw down the oar, and leaning my head upon my hands, gave way to every gloomy idea that arose. If I looked up, I saw scenes that were familiar to me in my happier time, and which I had contemplated but the day before, in the company of her who now was but a shadow and recollection. Tears streamed from my eyes. The rain had ceased for a moment, and I saw the fish play in the waters as they had done a few hours before. They had been observed by Elizabeth. Nothing is so painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change. The sun might shine, the clouds might lower, but nothing could ever appear to me as it had done on the day before. A fiend had snatched from me every hope of happiness. No creature had ever been so miserable as I was. So frightful an event is single in the history of man. But why should I dwell upon the incidents that followed this last overwhelming event? Mine has been a tale of horrors. I have reached their acme, and what I must now relate can be but tedious to you. Know that one by one, my friends were snatched away. I was left desolate. My own strength is exhausted, and I must tell, in a few words, what remains of my hideous narration. I arrived at Geneva. My father and Ernest yet lived, but the former sunk under the tidings I bore. I see him now, excellent and venerable old man. His eyes wandered in vacancy, for they had lost their charm and their delight. His Elizabeth, his more than daughter whom he doted on with all that affection which a man feels, who, in the decline of his life, having few affections, clings more earnestly to those that remain. Cursed, cursed be the fiend that brought misery on his gray hairs and doomed him to waste in wretchedness. He could not live under the horrors of my youth. He could not live under the horrors that were accumulated around him. The springs of existence suddenly gave way. He was unable to rise from his bed, and in a few days he died in my arms. What then became of me? I know not. I lost sensation, and chains and darkness were the only objects that pressed upon me. Sometimes, indeed, I dreamt that I wandered in flowery meadows and pleasant vales with the friends of my youth. But I awoke and found myself in a dungeon. Melancholy followed, but by degrees I gained a clear conception of my miseries and situation, and was then released from my prison. For they had called me mad, and during many months, as I understood, a solitary cell had been my habitation. Liberty, however, had been a useless gift to me, had I not, as I awakened to reason, at the same time awakened to revenge. As the memory of past misfortunes pressed upon me, I began to reflect upon their cause. The monster whom I had created. The miserable demon whom I had sent abroad into the world for my destruction. I was possessed by a maddening rage when I thought of him, and desired and ardently prayed that I might have him within my grasp to wreak a great and signal revenge on his cursed head. Nor did I Nor did my hate long confine itself to useless wishes. I began to reflect on the best means of securing him, and for this purpose, about a month after my release, I repaired to a criminal judge in the town and told him that I had an accusation to make, that I knew the destroyer of my family, and that I required him to exert his whole authority for the apprehension of the murderer. The magistrate listened to me with attention and kindness. Be assured, sir, no pains or exertions on my part shall be spared to discover the villain. I thank you, replied I. Listen, therefore, to the deposition that I have to make. It is indeed a tale so strange that I should fear you would not credit it, were there not something in truth which, however wonderful, forces conviction. The story is too connected to be mistaken for a dream, and I have no motive for falsehood. My manner, as I thus addressed him, was impressive, but calm. I had formed in my own heart a resolution to pursue my destroyer to death, and this purpose quieted my agony, and, for an interval, reconciled me to life. I now related my history briefly, but with firmness and precision, marking the dates with accuracy, and never deviating into invective or exclamation. The magistrate appeared, at first, perfectly incredulous, but as I continued, he became more attentive and interested. I saw him sometimes shudder with horror, at others a lively surprise, unmingled with disbelief, was painted on his countenance. When I had concluded my narration, I said, "This is the being whom I accuse, and for whose seizure and punishment I call upon you to exert your whole power. It is your duty as a magistrate, and I believe and hope your feelings as a man will not revolt from the execution of those functions on this occasion." This address caused a considerable change in the physiognomy of my own auditor. He heard my story with that half kind of belief that is given to a tale of spirits and supernatural events. But when he was called upon to act officially in consequence, the whole tide of his incredulity returned. He, however, answered mildly, "I would willingly afford you every aid in your pursuit, but the creature whom you speak appears to have powers which would put all my exertions to defiance. Who can follow an animal which can traverse the sea of ice, and inhabit caves and dens where no man would venture to intrude? Besides, some months have elapsed since the commission of his crimes, and no one can conjecture to what place he has wandered, or what region he may inhabit. I do not doubt that he hovers near the spot which I inhabit, and if he has indeed taken refuge in the Alps, he may be hunted like chamois, and destroyed as a beast of prey. But I perceive your thoughts. You do not credit my narrative, and do not intend to pursue my enemy with the punishment which is his desert." As I spoke, rage sparkled in my eyes. The magistrate was intimidated. "You are mistaken," said he. I will exert myself, and if it is in my power to seize the monster, be assured that he will suffer punishment proportionate to his crimes. But I fear, from what you yourself describe to be his properties, that this will prove impracticable, and thus, while every measure is pursued, you should make up your mind to disappointment. That cannot be, but all that I can say will be of little avail. My revenge is of no moment to you yet. While I allow it to be a vice, I confess that it is devouring and the only passion of my soul. My rage is unspeakable when I reflect that the murderer whom I turned loose upon society still exists. You refuse my demand. I have but one resource, and I devote myself, either in life or in death, to his destruction. I trembled with excess of agitation as I said this. There was a frenzy in my manner, and something, I doubt not, of that haughty fierceness which the martyrs of old are said to have possessed. But to a Genevan magistrate whose mind was occupied by far other ideas than those of devotion and heroism, this elevation of mind had much the appearance of madness. He endeavored to soothe me as a nurse does a child, and reverted to my tale as the effects of delirium. Man, I cried, how ignorant art thou in thy pride of wisdom! Cease, you know not what it is you say. I broke from the house, angry and disturbed, and retired to meditate on some other mode of action. And thus concludes chapter 23 of Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, by Mary Shelley. What is going on outside? The garage door is rattling. What is the wind speed? Isolated thunderstorms. Whatever it is, if it's rattling the door like that, it's got to be bad. How do I even pull up the wind speed on this? It just says isolated thunderstorms. It says 4 miles an hour with 12 mile an hour gusts, but that cannot be right. Whatever is going on is some sort of weird pressure system that's warping the garage door. Even if it's not windy, it's some sort of air pressure change is rapidly occurring. Yeah, okay. So that's fun. Nothing like reading Frankenstein and then a crazy storm breaks out. I'm a little worried that I should unplug the computer if it's this bad. Wolfzilla says that storm do be crazy. Just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. Wolfzilla, harbinger of news. Is there any news that we need to be aware of? Oh. I see you just texted me about lunch. Presumably that is what you were texting me about. Or what you came by for. Yes. Cool. Let me check the Nash Severe weather real quick, because So usually it can rain in here like crazy. This is like the best garage door I've ever had. And like the door does like I don't even know that there's a storm going on half the time if I'm down in here. But like this is like warping things like crazy. Non-severe storms. Okay, so it's not the wind. It must be the pressure shift. Like the pressure inside the apartment versus outside the apartment is. Oh, that's fair. Yeah, no, we just finished reading chapter 23 of Frankenstein. And we're about to wind down because, yeah, this... Waffle says there's a huge pressure wave that came through earlier. That seems to be about it. Yeah, well, whatever it is, it's like warping my garage door. Not like continuously, like there's like an active vacuum effect, but like it's just like warping in and out, which would normally be the sort of thing you would associate with like a huge gust of wind. But normally... Oh. Apparently Badger has been opening the door to check on the weather, and so that might have been causing the pressure changes inside the apartment, which was warping the garage door. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Cool, cool, cool. Thank you, Badger. That's reassuring that it's not some sort of bonkers natural phenomena. Okay. Cool. All right. So, well, with the storm coming in, let's go ahead and thank everybody who's tipped thus far, and then we're going to wrap it up for an evening. Thank you very much to Sion for tipping 10, or 10. That is going to get us now 4 away from our next face camera expansion milestone. But yeah, normally we'd stick around for a little longer, but I want to get everything unplugged before this goes sideways. So, thank you all so much for hanging out. Until next time, y'all, this is... Oh, yeah, I usually raid somebody. I'm, like, so focused on, like, getting things unplugged. I'm, like... Bum, 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 bum. Let's see what's going on right now. It looks like Jevin's streaming on HermitCraft, so we're going to raid Jevin real quick. Hopefully... Oh, wait. No, Jev's wrapping up, too. Okay, so we're gonna head out. Not raid Jevin. Looks like they're playing Deadpool over on Hot Nudge. Deadpool is one of my favorite pinball games in terms of comedy. So when you get over there, our raid message is, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop.